Honora Fenn was 39 the autumn she came to Blackmere, a widow with a mended cloak, a purse that held $9, and a halved silver token she had carried since the foundling house, and could not read. The keep on the crag above the lake was reckoned worth less than the coins in her palm. The parish roll valued it at $9. Not 90. Not 900. 9. A drowned shell of a castle no honest soul would take even as a gift. They called it the Shunned Keep, and they said the name low, as people name a grave. Its towers stood black against the water. Its gate had not opened in the memory of anyone who would speak of it. A well in its inner court had been sealed with lead and stone, and the ceiling was old, older than the men who now warned her off it. She had not meant to want it. She had meant to sell the ruin, or to refuse it outright, and to be gone from the north before the first hard frost closed the roads. A pauper does not keep a castle. A purse like hers keeps a body moving. From one cold town to the next, sleeping where the straw is cheap and rising before the reckoning is due. But the token in her pocket had a raven on it, worn nearly smooth, and the coins that would spill across the causeway wall 3 mornings later would carry the same bird, struck deep and bright. She did not know that yet. She knew only that the road had run out beneath her, and the last thing waiting at the end of it was a ruin nobody living wanted. This is how a woman with nothing came to own it. The wager happened in the low room of a droving inn, in candle smoke, and the smell of wet wool and spilled ale. Mr. Crail kept the deed to the Shunned Keep as a man keeps a bad tooth, because pulling it had cost more than leaving it be. He was a lender of small money at large interest. He had won the ruin years before from a gentleman who could not pay, and he had regretted the winning every quarter day since, when the tax fell due on a rock that returned him not 1 penny. "There is no taking rent from ghosts," Crail said to no one, turning a card against the boards. "No roof, no tenant, no toll on the causeway. A drowned stone the taxman still charges me for, as if a corpse could be made to work." Honora sat near the fire to dry her hem. She had a trick of being quiet that made men forget she was in the room, and she had learned long ago, in a cold dormitory full of forgotten children, that a forgotten woman hears everything worth hearing. "Then be rid of it," she said. Crail looked up, startled. He had not known anyone was attending him. "Rid of it. She says it as plain as bread." He laughed without any warmth in it. "Woman, I have offered that curse to every fool between here and the coast. They cross themselves and they walk the faster." "I am not from here," Honora said. "And I have no coach waiting to hurry me anywhere at all." He studied her then. The mended cloak, the steady eyes, the boots gone soft and pale with miles of walking. "You have the look of one the world has already thrown out and forgotten to bury," he said. "That is the only kind that ever sits still long enough to listen to me." "Name your price for the place," she said. "There is no price. I have told you plainly. No one will pay a single penny for a drowned tomb." He spread the pack flat under one hand, an old habit, a lender's habit, the fingers of a man forever counting what was not there. Then some sour amusement turned in his face. "But I will cut you for it." "Cut me for it," she repeated. "1 cut. High card, and no more to it than that." He tapped the deck with a yellow nail. "If your card sits higher than mine, the deed is yours, and the tax with it, and every curse the folk here swear the place carries down to the smallest imp. If my card sits higher, you buy me a hot supper for wasting my evening on a beggar. That is the whole of the stake, a worthless ruin set against a plate of mutton. You will forgive me if I say I cannot lose." She should have laughed and let the jest die. A castle is not a thing a sane woman wins across a wet table, but the fire was kind on her cold hands, and the raven token lay heavy in her pocket, and something she could not name had been drawing her north for the better part of a month. Mile after mile, past every crossroads where a wiser traveler would have turned for a warmer country. "Cut," she said. Krail cut. He turned up the 9 of clubs and grinned, already tasting his supper, already easy again. Honora set 2 fingers on the deck. She did not pray. She had left off praying years ago, in a place where the prayers of small children rose to the rafters and stayed there. She simply cut the cards and turned her own up on the boards between them, face to the candle. The Queen of Spades, a dark queen in the yellow light, looking sideways off the card as though she had somewhere far better to be, and meant to go there directly. The low room went still. The potboy stopped with a jug in his hand. Krail stared at the 2 cards a long moment, the 9 and the Queen, and the ease drained out of his face like ale from a cracked cup. Then he pushed the deed across the wet table with a single finger, the way a man pushes off a plate he has stopped trusting. "It is yours," he said, and his voice had lost its music. "God keep you, woman, for I will not. You have gone and won the one prize in all the North that no living soul has ever wanted." He would not take her hand to seal it. He drew back as if her fingers carried fever. "Do not open the well," he added, lower, so the potboy would not catch it. "Whatever else you make of the place. Leave the well exactly as you find it, capped and quiet." She asked him why she should. "Because the man who owned it before me laid the same charge on me the night he signed it over," Krail said, "and I never once found the courage to ask him why either. Some doors you are glad, in the end, that you left shut." She reached the causeway at first light, 3 cold mornings after, on foot and alone, her breath going white in front of her face. The lake lay flat and dark as poured pitch, without a ripple, and out of it rose the crag, and upon the crag stood the keep, far grander seen from below than the small word ruin had prepared her to meet. It had many towers. Its curtain wall showed broken battlements against the sky, like a jaw with half its teeth knocked out. A great arched gatehouse faced the water, black and open in its throat. Bare trees clung to the rock beneath the walls, and a thin autumn mist crept across the surface of the lake, with no wind to drive it, as breath creeps across a held mirror. A single spit of stone ran out from the near shore to the foot of the crag. A raised road laid across deep water, wide enough for a cart, worn hollow down its center by the feet of the long dead. She set her boot upon it. The old stone rang under her heel. The mist parted around her knees and closed again behind her, cold and gray and soft, and the towers grew taller as she went, until they filled the whole of the sky ahead of her, and the shore she had left was only a rumor at her back. Halfway out, upon the low wall that edged the causeway against the drop, she found the box. It was a strong box, iron-bound, very old, its wood gone gray and hard as horn, its lid thrown back on one broken hinge. Rain and long years had spilled its keeping across the flat capstones, a little drift of coins, gold going faintly green at the rims. A few of them tumbled into a puddle where they lay lit like small fish frozen under ice. It was no hoard. It was a handful. Enough to buy a supper and a bed and no more than that. Coin left lying loose in the open weather, on an unguarded wall, on a road no one walked, for anyone at all to take up who passed. Honora crouched over the scatter of it. She was a woman with $9 to her name, on a cold road at the end of a hard year, and here before her lay gold gone loose and unwatched in the frost. Her hand went out toward it. Then her hand stopped, of its own accord, above the wet capstone. Each coin carried a raven. It was the same worn bird as the token she had carried the whole length of her life. Only these were sharp and deep and unmistakable, struck by someone who had the money to strike coins and the right to set a bird upon them. She turned one over between her fingers. Around its rim ran letters half-eaten by weather. She could make out 3 of them. She could not make out the rest, for Honora Fenn had never once been taught her letters. A foundling girl was taught to scrub a floor and to hold her tongue, not to read what her betters wrote. She took 2 coins from the box, only 2, enough to eat that day. She left the rest lying in the wet, and she could not have told a living soul the reason, except that a chest set open on a wall, in the weather. For the passing poor did not feel like a thing a person was meant to rob. It felt like a thing a person was meant to find, and be quietly grateful for, and pass on by. She lowered the broken lid over what remained, gently, as though the box might feel the frost, and she went on toward the gatehouse, with the 2 coins warming in her fist, and her heart going harder than the short walk could account for. At the mouth of the gate, in a narrow window set above the arch, a lamp was burning. She stopped beneath the arch and looked up at it. A small yellow flame stood steady behind old and dusty glass. Trimmed, tended, alive, not a fire kindled by lightning, nor left by tramps to gutter out. A lamp that some hand had filled with oil and set into a window on purpose, and meant. In a keep the whole north swore was empty, drowned, and dead. A single light had been faithfully kept. "You will be wanting to state your business," said a voice out of the dark beside her, dry and unhurried, "before you carry yourself any further into a house that is not your own." She turned sharply. An old man stood within the shadow of the gate, an unlit lantern in one hand, a coat upon him that had been good cloth in its day, and was now more mending than cloth. His hair was white as the mist. His eyes, when the gray light found them, were sharp and entirely unsurprised, as if he had been expecting someone for a very long time, and was only mildly curious which someone it would prove to be. "It is my own," Honora said. "The keep. I won it at cards, 3 nights gone, from a man called Crail. Did you now?" The old man did not stir. "And what name do you carry that wins a castle at cards from a moneylender?" "Honora Fenn." Something crossed his face at the second name, caught, and let go again. He lifted the dark lantern a little, as though to see her the better by no light at all, and then he did a strange thing. He looked not at her clothes, nor at her hands, nor at the deed she had not yet shown him, but at her face, at her brow, her chin, the wide set of her eyes, and he read it as a man reads a page he has read before in another book, long ago, and cannot for his life place. "Fenn," he said at last, softly, "Fenn is no name that ever belonged to this rock." He let the lantern down. "I am Elias. I keep the gate here. I have kept it a great while." "For whom?" she asked. "The place stands empty, for whoever the lamp is lit for," Elias said. "That has not altered in the whole of my life, and I am old." He turned and went in under the arch, and after a moment, because there was truly nowhere else in the wide world for her to go, she gathered her cloak and followed him in through the gate of the keep she had won on the turn of a card. Within the walls the cold was a different cold, older and more patient, the cold of stone that has not held a fire in a lifetime of winters. The inner court opened gray and wide around them. Weeds had split the flagstones and stood dead and stiff with frost. A stair climbed one wall and ended in open air where a floor had fallen. And there, in the very middle of the court, ringed by a low curb of dressed stone and sealed across its mouth with a cap of lead and hard mortar, sat the well. Honora crossed to it before she had decided to. Elias let her go and watched her going. The cap was careful work, not hasty, not the rough plug a man sets to keep a child from tumbling in, but a slow and deliberate sealing, done to shut something safely within, or to shut the whole grasping world without. Around the lead, into the curb itself, someone had cut a line of words. She ran her fingertips along the grooves and felt each letter without being able to read a single one, the strokes worn shallow by weather, but plainly meant to last. "What does it say?" she asked him. Elias was quiet a moment, choosing, "It says, keep faith and keep it sealed, until the raven comes home." He watched her hand where it lay flat on the cold stone. "You cannot read the words for yourself." "No," she admitted. "I never learned." "And yet you walked straight to the well," he said, "past 100 other stones, as though you already knew it to be the beating heart of the whole house." "Krail charged me not to open it," Honora said. The man before him charged Krail the same, and not one of them would say the reason why. "No," said Elias, and looked away across the court. "They would not. Some silences are a kind of keeping, too." He made her a fire in a small dry room off the ruined kitchen, the one chamber of the keep he kept warm for himself, and he gave her broth from a black pot hung over the coals, and dark bread. And he watched her eat with a close attention that would have troubled her badly if she had not been so cold, and so worn down by the road. When she had eaten, he set a cup of something hot into her 2 hands and drew a stool up across the hearth from her. And for a while neither of them spoke a word, and the lamp above the gate burned on in its high window over the dark and waiting water. "You keep a light burning in an empty house," she said at last. "You leave good gold lying loose on an open wall for any thief to lift. Explain these things to me, old man, for it seems I have won a riddle and not a castle at all." Elias turned the cup slowly in his knotted hands. "There had been a family here," he said, "a long line of them, further back than the register ran. Corvain, they were called. The last true lord of that name was a quiet sort of man, not grand, not loud, the kind the great world overlooks entirely, and the poor never do. He kept 2 customs above all his others, and I have kept the pair of them after him. A custom is only a promise worn smooth, and a promise does not end merely because the mouth that made it has stopped." "The lamp," she said. "The lamp," he agreed, and nodded toward the gate. "Set burning every night, so that no traveler lost upon the shore in the dark should look out across the water and see nothing there but the shape of death. A light in a window tells a frightened soul that a living hand is near and awake." He held that the cheapest thing a rich house owns is the oil in a lamp, and the dearest gift it can offer a stranger is the plain belief that someone yonder is watching and has not forgotten him. Honora sat very still upon her stool. "And the box," she said. "The box on the causeway wall, the wayfarer's box," said Elias. "Set out upon the wall, always open, never once locked, with coin kept in it, for any poor soul who crossed the water to Blackmere carrying nothing. Take what you need to eat and to sleep," he charged them, "and nothing beyond that, and no eye set to watch which coins your hand chose. In 40 years of my keeping it, I never once found that box emptied by a greedy fist. The poor," he used to tell me, "are honest about their hunger. It is the rich who cannot be left alone in a room with an open chest." The old man looked up at her then, over the coals. "You took from it this morning. I saw you come." 2 coins, she said, and heard her own voice go tight and strange in her throat. "Only the 2. I left all the rest of it lying. I could not have told you why I left it." "No," said Elias, very gently. "You could not have. But he could have told you, had he lived to meet you at his gate." Take only what you need and leave the rest for the next cold traveler. That was the whole law of this house. Cut deeper into it than any words in any stone. He set down his cup. It is a strange thing, Honora Fenn, to sit and watch a stranger off the road keep a dead man's rule that no living hand ever taught her. The days that followed were quiet days, and she did not go. She told herself each gray morning that she would walk to the coast and find a lawyer and sell the drowned ruin to some madman who collected such places, and each morning she did not set out. She learned the keep instead. Elias walked it with her, cold room by cold room, and everywhere he took her, he showed her the same truth wearing a different coat. Here, a long hall with 100 trestle marks worn deep into the boards, where the family had fed the whole starving valley through a famine winter. Grain given out freely, never sold, until the barns stood swept and bare, and the family sat down to eat thin at the same board as the tenants. Here, a chapel with a poor box built with a false bottom, so that a proud man too ashamed to beg might take from it in the dark, with no eye upon him to mark his shame. Here, a ledger room, its sagging shelves bowed under book upon book of accounts, and the accounts, when Elias opened them, were not the record of what the family had gathered in, but of everything it had let go. He took one green-bound book down from the shelf and opened it upon his knee, and he did not read it aloud to her, for she could not have followed the columns, but he ran one finger down a page and told her what the small marks meant. "Rents forgiven," he said. "This whole side of the leaf. A hard year, the frost late, and the harvest drowned. Do you mark the two small letters set after each name? N.C. It stands for no charge." He wrote it beside a debt to strike the debt out, so that no clerk who came after him could ever call the sum owing again. Whole winters of no charge, year upon year. A man could have been twice as rich as he was, and not a tenth so loved. Then why write it down at all? Honora asked, if the debts were only to be forgiven. "Because a kindness done in secret is a kindness still," said Elias. "But a kindness set down in ink is a kindness that cannot be denied afterward by hard men who would far rather it had never been done." He used to say that a plain account book is the one weapon a gentle man is able to leave his heirs. Not the gold. The written and dated proof of exactly who was fed, and when and by whom, against the day the wolves came asking. She turned that over in her mind a long while, sitting on a low stool in the cold ledger room with the green books ranked around her like a rampart. "And where are they all now?" she asked at last. "These heirs, this gentle family with its burning lamp and its open box." Elias closed the book upon his knee. "Gone," he said. "Every last one of them but a memory and an old servant." There came a bad year at the very end of the line. A cousin of the house, a lawyer by his trade and a wolf by his nature, brought a claim against them. He swore the true line had failed, that he stood the nearest surviving blood, that the keep and every acre under it fell to him by right. He forged where he could not prove, and he bought the men he could not forge. And in the thick of that long fighting, the last lord's own child was lost away from the family, carried off in secret to be kept from the cousin's reaching hands, and never once brought home. The old man's voice did not shake, but it slowed as a cart slows going uphill. The Lord sealed the well with his own grief before he died. He put down into it the three proofs, the true deed, the leaf cut from the parish register, and the token, and he had it capped with lead, and he cut those words into the curb with his own chisel. "Keep faith and keep it sealed until the raven comes home." "The token," Honora said, and the word came out of her barely above the fire's whisper. "The half of one," said Elias. "A silver piece, cut clean in two across the middle. One half he sealed down in the well beside the register leaf that names the child by name. The other half went away with the child into hiding, so that whoever one day brought that child home again might be certainly known by it, and no forger with a painted pedigree could ever stand up in the true heir's place. He looked then at her hands, folded tight in her lap. "Do you take my meaning, Honora Fenn?" He did not hide away gold in that well against his death. He hid a name in it. He hid a person. She did not answer him. She had no breath in her to answer with. Her hand had gone, without her willing it, to her pocket, and closed hard around the worn half-coin she had carried out of the foundling house, and across the entire span of her life. And she sat there with it hidden in her fist, and said not one word. Because to speak aloud the thing that was rising in her, there in that cold room of forgiven debts, felt like reaching out for something certain to be snatched from her the very instant she dared to name it. She had learned that lesson in the foundling house as well. You do not say the good thing aloud. Saying it aloud, where the world can hear, is only how the world learns what to take from you next. The lawyer came on a low gray afternoon, with 2 clerks at his heel and a paper in his coat. Honora saw the boat first, a black splinter upon the pale lake, and then the 3 men climbing the causeway. And Elias beside her at the gate went still in a manner she had not seen in him before, the flat, listening stillness of an old dog that has caught, on the wind, the scent of one particular fox it has hated all its life. "Rossiter," he said. "So, he is not dead after all this while, nor is his hate." Mr. Rossiter came up through the gate as a man comes into a house he has already decided is his. He was well dressed and dry of voice, with soft, clean hands and a smile that never once climbed above his mouth to trouble his eyes. He took in the ruined court, the sealed well, the white-haired servant, and last of all and least of all he took in Honora, glancing off her as one glances off a scullery maid met upon a stair. "I am given to understand," he said, "that some vagrant woman has been squatting these weeks in my property. I have come out personally to correct the error, and kindly, before the law is put to the trouble of correcting it less kindly." "Your property," said Honora. "The Corvain estate," said Rossiter, "of which I am the sole surviving heir." He drew the paper from his breast and let it fall open, heavy with wax and colored ribbon. A pedigree, he called it, drawn and confirmed by counsel, and unopposed these 30 years for the plain reason that no soul had been left alive able to oppose it. "The line is dead. I am the nearest blood. The rock is mine, the water beneath it is mine, and the lead in the crag under your feet is mine. And I mean at last to have it out and sell it, well and lamp and every superstitious rag of the place together." "I won this keep at cards," Honora said, "from a man named Crail, who held the deed in law and who gave it over to me before honest witnesses in an inn." For the first time the smile reached up as far as his eyes, and it was not any warmth that lit them. "A tavern deed," he said, "a drunkard's paper, shoved across a wet table to a beggar over cards. I will have that scrap torn to pieces before a magistrate in a single morning." Crail never owned this rock in his life. No court in the whole North will let a card trick stand for an instant against a proven pedigree and a lawfully sealed estate. He folded the paper away again into his coat. "You have until the quarter sessions, 7 days. Be gone off my rock by then, and take the old fool with you, or I shall have you whipped through the parish for a trespasser." "And the well?" said Elias, very quietly, from the shadow of the arch. Rossiter's head came round. For the space of a single heartbeat the dry ease went clean out of him, and something far colder looked out through the gap it left. "The well stays sealed until it is mine to break," he said. Then I will break it myself, and cart out whatever moldering nonsense the old madman buried down there. Do you hear me, old man? Lay one finger to that lead before the sessions have made this estate mine, and I will name it theft, and see the pair of you swing for it at the assize. There is nothing in that hole but a dead man's madness, but it is my madness now, by law, and no living hand opens it before mine. He went back down the causeway with his clerks trailing after, and the black boat bore the three of them off across the flat gray water, and Honora stood beside the sealed well with the half-coin burning a hole in her pocket, and understood, at last and all in a rush, exactly why no one had ever once been permitted to open it. He knows, she said slowly. He knows what lies in it. That is the whole reason he forbids the breaking of it. Not because the well is empty. Because it is not empty at all. He knows there is a proof down there, said Elias. What he does not know is that the proof can still be answered from the far side. He believes the child died in the hiding, these 30 years gone, and the matching half of the token lost into a ditch with her. A forger fears only one thing on this whole earth, Honora Fenn, the true thing, come walking home at last, that his forgery cannot look in the face. The old man turned to her, and his sharp eyes were wet now, and did not waver. Show me your hand, he said. You have kept it shut fast since the ledger room. Show me what it is you carry. She opened her fist between them. The half-coin lay upon her palm, silver worn down to the very color of the lake, cut clean across the middle by some blade a whole lifetime ago. Upon the one face of it that remained a bird stood in half-profile, one wing, one folded claw, half of a lifted head. A raven, sheared in two straight across the breast. Elias looked at it for a long time, and did not put out his hand to touch it. When he spoke, his voice had gone down to almost nothing at all. They left you at a foundling house, he said, with this pinned upon you. Inside my swaddling, Honora said. It is the only thing I have ever owned that was mine before ever I could remember the owning of it. The women there could not read the letters cut around the rim. They set me down in their book as Fenn, for the Fenn country where a carter found me, and they gave me Honora because it fell upon a Sunday, and the parson was fond of the name. I am no one. I have always and only ever been no one. Her voice broke upon the last of it. Old man, tell me straight and tell me true. Am I only letting myself believe a beautiful thing because I am cold and tired and want a home of my own so badly now that I could lie down and die of the wanting? Say it is nothing. I would sooner you told me it was nothing than have it lifted out of my hands at the sessions before witnesses. I will not tell you it is nothing, said Elias, for two reasons. Because I do not lie to the faces of the desperate, and because I myself held the other half of that same coin in my own hand, the night the last lord sealed it down into the well. He drew a slow and steadying breath. But wanting is not proof, girl, and neither is belief. Rossiter has his wax, and his ribbon, and his bought counsel, and you have half a broken coin and a face that I half remember from 30 years ago. In a court of law, half a coin is a beggar's trinket, unless it can be laid against its own other half, and matched, before honest and sworn witnesses. The proof of you is down that well. And the well is forbidden now on pain of the rope, and there are 7 days until the sessions. The 7 days ran down like water through a cracked jar, and nothing she could do would hold them. The valley learned that she was there. The North Country keeps no secret longer than it takes a shepherd to walk down to an inn, and the valley began, quietly and without any fuss, to come. Not with pitchforks and torches, with small things brought by hand. An old woman rowed herself across at dusk and left a crock of dark honey upon the causeway wall beside the wayfarer's box, and rode away again into the mist, without a single word spoken. A farmer she had never in her life met walked all the way out to the gate and stood there turning his hat round and round in his hands, and said only, "My grandfather was fed at this door, sir, in the black winter, when there was nothing anywhere. We've none of us forgot it." Then he walked the long road home again. They had not forgotten. That was the very thing the green books had promised, and the valley now stood forth and proved it true. A kindness written down and dated is a kindness that can never afterward be denied. The family that had fed them was 50 years and more in the churchyard, and still, when a lawyer came rowing out to pull down the lamp and drain the lake for its lead, the sons and grandsons of the fed came walking out across the water to stand near a friendless stranger, because their own grandfathers were written somewhere in a green book, under those 2 small letters, and the debt of that ancient mercy ran the other way now, and they knew it. On the 4th day before the sessions, a shepherd brought word that Rossiter had lodged his forged pedigree with the clerk of the court and set the hearing firm. 4 days. On the 2nd day before the sessions, the parson came out himself, a nervous, decent, threadbare man who had christened the better half of the valley at that very font. And Elias took him aside into the cold chapel, and the 2 of them spoke low together for the better part of an hour, and the parson came back out into the court pale, and shaken but somehow resolved. The parish register for that year was not lost after all, he told her, only incomplete. A single leaf had been cut clean out of it long ago, the very leaf, the old people always said, that set down the last Corvain child, cut out and hidden away, so that the cousin's men could not get at it to burn it. He gripped his own hands together to still them, and laid the rest of it out plainly. If the leaf sealed in the well is matched to the torn stub still bound in the register, and the coin matched to the leaf, and honest sworn men see all 3 brought together at one time, it would stand. Before any bench in all of England, it would stand and hold. Half a coin alone is a trinket. But a coin, and the leaf it was cut against, and the register both were torn from, laid together before witnesses on oath, that is no trinket. That is a birth, proved. Then we must open the well, said Honora. On pain of the rope, Elias reminded her, not to stop her, only so that she would carry the full weight of it. On the morning before the sessions, she said, with the whole valley gathered for witness, and the parson, and Rossiter's own painted paper read out beside the true one, in the open, where no clerk in his pay can quietly bury any of it. Let him have us hanged, then, for opening a hole in the ground, in the sight of every family whose water his lead pit means to poison, with the true heir's own coin held up whole in the light. She looked from the old man to the frightened priest. He has ruled this rock by keeping that well shut. The shutting of it is his whole power. So we take it from him the one way it can be taken. We open it. They opened it at dawn, on the last day, with more than 40 souls standing close in the inner court and out along the causeway, and the mist coming up off the lake the same cool and pitiless gray as the first morning she had ever crossed it. It was slow, hard work. The lead cap did not wish to give. 2 smiths from down the valley had brought their bars and their patience, and they worked the old mortar loose a finger's width at a time, while the crowd pressed near and breathed white into the cold. And Elias knelt at the curb with one hand laid flat upon the worn words, as though he were asking the stone itself to pardon what they did to it. And over them all stood Honora, the half-coin out of her pocket at last, and hung upon a cord about her neck, plain in the open now, catching and holding the thin new light. The cap came free with a groan of old lead. Beneath it, upon an iron chain gone the deep brown of dried blood, there hung a small casket, and they drew it up hand over hand into the daylight, slow, and the whole crowd made not one sound. Elias broke the seal of wax upon the lid with the ball of his thumb. He lifted it. Within, wrapped close in oilcloth against the wet of 40 winters, lay 3 things and no gold at all. A deed, its great seal whole and unbroken. A single leaf of parchment, its edge cut clean and then torn ragged where a knife had once freed it from the spine of a book. And a small bright scrap of silver, kept from the killing air by the oilcloth, half of a coin, sheared clean across the breast of a raven. "Bring the register," said the parson, and his voice would not hold quite steady. They carried the great book out from the chapel and laid it open upon the well curb, and there it was for all to see, the stub, the ragged torn root of a leaf long gone. The parson lifted the leaf out of the casket and set its cut edge carefully against the torn stub bound in the book, and the jagged line of the old tear ran true from the one into the other, tooth fitting into tooth, notch into notch, a thing no forger alive could ever counterfeit, for only the single knife that had cut them both apart could fit the two of them back together. "It is the leaf," he said low. "It is the register's own true leaf, torn from this very book. And it names," he bent close, and read, and one hand rose slowly to his mouth. He read it again to be certain past all doubt. It names the last child of the house. A daughter, born in the Raven year, given away in secret to be kept safe from the claim, with a token cut in 2, one half of it sealed down here against the day of her return. He lifted his head, and he looked at Honora, and the whole court turned upon her breath and looked with him. "Honora, come, bring your half of it up here." She lifted the cord from about her neck with hands that would not stay still for her. And she knelt at the curb between the old servant and the priest, and she laid her own worn half of silver down against the bright half drawn up from the well. The 2 halves of the raven came together, breast to sundered breast. Wing found its wing, claw found its claw. The one lifted half head became a whole head, turned and watchful. The cut ran true across the join, every notch of it, as true as the torn leaf against its stub, silver to silver, one metal, one bird, one break made whole. And where the letters worn smooth upon her half had been eaten down to only 3, the bright half fetched up from the dark carried all the rest of them clean and sharp, so that the parson bent and read the whole word around the rim aloud at last, in the cold and brightening morning, to 40 witnesses and the risen sun. It was a name. It was her name. It was the name that had been hers before ever the fen, and the foundling house with its narrow cot, and the mended cloak, and the $9 in a beggar's purse, the name of the house upon the crag, cut into silver on the very night she was carried out of it, and laid down to wait in a sealed well through 30 gray winters for the raven to come home. Honora Fenn, who had walked into that valley as no one at all, knelt upon the wet stone of the wellhead and was, in the sight of the entire gathered valley, someone at last. Not made rich by it. Made known. The keep had never hidden gold away from her. It had hidden her own lost self, and kept it safe against every thief and every fire, and given it back into her hands whole. Rossiter came at the very height of it, and came too late, his boat driven hard across the lake, and his face gone the gray of the mist upon it. He came storming up the causeway, roaring for the sheriff, roaring theft, roaring that the seal had been broken against his express and lawful prohibition, and that he would have every last one of them before the sessions within the hour. "You will hang for this," he cried, striding in through the arch into the crowded court. "Every soul who laid a hand to that lead. It is my estate, my seal, my own, read it out," said Honora. She stood up slowly from the curb. She did not raise her voice to him. She had spent the whole of her life being quiet, and she had learned, somewhere upon the long road, that a quiet word chosen and set down at exactly the right moment will carry further across a still court than any man's shout. "You have a paper, Mr. Rossiter. Read it aloud. Read your pedigree out, here, now, in front of all these people. And the parson will read this true leaf beside it, and we will see plainly which of them the knife fits." She held up the joined coin, the whole raven bright and staring in the morning. "You built your claim upon there being no one left living to answer it. Here I am, answering, half a coin from a foundling house, its own other half from a dead lord's well. And the register leaf they were both cut against, all three matched before 40 witnesses and a priest. Read your paper, sir, and then tell these men, whose grandfathers this house fed through the black winter, that the wax on your ribbon weighs the heavier against the tear in this parchment." Rossiter did not read his paper. His hand went to his coat, and there it stopped, and did not draw the pedigree out into the light. He looked at the joined coin, and at the matched leaf, and at the torn stub gaping in the open register, and at the two grim smiths leaning upon their bars, and at the farmers who had come rowing out across the cold water to stand in a wall at her back, and at the old woman who had left the honey on the wall, and at the pale, resolute parson with his shaking hands, and he understood, in the sudden and total manner that only a forger can understand, that the one single thing he had built his whole life around avoiding had walked out of a foundling house and across a causeway and knelt down upon a wellhead in the plain light of morning. "This proves nothing," he said. But the dry voice had cracked clean across the middle, and every soul in the court had heard it break. "A coin, a leaf of old skin, sentiment and country nonsense. I have counsel, I have wax and seal and 30 years of—" "You have a lie," said Elias, rising up slowly from the curb. 30 years old, and never in all that time once made to stand up straight in the daylight beside the truth of the matter. It is standing beside the truth now, sir. Only look at it. Look how small a thing it has become. "The lead beneath this crag is mine," Rossiter began again, "and the law will stay in the crag," said Honora, "and the lake will stay a lake, and the lamp will stay lit above the gate, and the box will stay open upon the wall, because this is a Corvain house, once again, and that is the entire law of a Corvain house. Take what you need, and nothing beyond it. You came out here to take the whole of everything. That, sir, was your one error. In this valley, the man who comes to carry off the whole box is the only man the box was never set out for. The farmers moved then, not to strike him, not one blow, only to step in close and stand themselves between the lawyer and the open well, a plain wall of quiet men in work-stained coats. And Rossiter looked upon that silent wall and knew there was no going through it, not that morning, not with a paper, not ever again. He turned on his heel. He went back down the causeway alone, his clerks scuttling behind him, his boat a small black thing upon the wide gray water, and the whole valley stood and watched him go, and not one hand among them threw a single stone, for a man beaten by a written truth has no need at all of stoning. He needs only to be watched, while he leaves. The sessions came round in their turn, and the joined coin, and the matched leaf, and the register with its torn stub were laid together before the bench, exactly as the parson had sworn they would be. And it stood. The forged pedigree came apart beneath it like wet paper pulled in two. The name sealed in the well was entered in law against the name cut on the coin, and both of them against the tear in the leaf, and Honora Fenn was written down at the last under the name that had lain waiting for her all that while in the dark, air and blood to the shunned keep, and to the crag, and to every green book ranged along the shelves of its cold ledger room. She did not grow rich upon it. There was little enough money, and a very great deal of stone. The roof let the rain in over the great hall, and the acres were poor upland grazing that would never in 100 years make any soul a fortune. What she came into was not a treasure at all. It was a debt run clean backward, a valley that had once been fed and had never let itself forget the feeding, a lamp that must be kept filled, a box that must be kept open, and the written proof of 100 quiet mercies that were hers now, in her turn to carry on. Elias lived to see her take up the keeping of them. She learned her letters that first long winter. An old man and a grown woman bent together over a table by the fire, tracing those 2 small letters through the green books until she could read out for herself the whole long account of who had been fed, and forgiven, and remembered. And when at last she was able to read the words cut into the well curb with her own eyes, she understood that they had never once been a warning to keep folk away. They were no curse laid over a well, but a promise made to a lost and hidden child, and kept for 30 gray winters, by a lamp in a high window and a stubborn old man upon a gate, against the one single morning she would find her road home at last. If you've made it this far into Honora's story, then you already understand that the thing worth the keeping was never the gold spilled loose upon the causeway wall. The poor who crossed the water took 2 coins and left the rest lying, and the rich man who came out to take the whole of everything went home in his boat with nothing at all. And the difference between those 2 hands was the entire lesson the house upon the crag had ever tried to teach anyone. A castle can be won upon the turn of a single card. A name cannot. A name has to be kept safe for you by someone who flatly refuses to let a light go out, through winter after winter, until you are grown strong enough to come and claim it back. The lamp above the gate at Blackmere still burns there, every night. The box upon the wall stands open yet, with coin in it still set out for anyone who crosses the dark water, carrying nothing. And the old well in the inner court stands open now, its lead struck off it forever, because a house has no further need to seal a proof away in the dark, once the proof of it is home, and standing in its own hall, reading its own ledger by its own kept light. So here is the question the Shunned keep leaves with you, before you go on your way tonight. If everything you have were taken from you tomorrow, the money and the roof and the very name you answer to when you are called, what would you most hope some quiet, stubborn soul had kept burning in a window? Against the black night you finally found your way back? And would you rather be the one who left the coins lying open on the wall for a cold stranger, or the one who came rowing out in a fine boat to carry the whole box away? Tell us in the comments where you are watching from tonight, and whether there is a lamp somewhere in your own life that was once kept lit for you when you had lost your road. Subscribe and stay near the warm fire with us, and we will have another story ready for you when the next lamp is lit against the dark. Until that night comes, keep your own small light burning in the window. You never can know who is out upon the cold water, looking for a shore that has not forgotten them.